Starting in this industry as a designer, my core belief was I could create anything with a used Mac and a copy of Photoshop. Adobe represented the tools needed to bring creativity to life, and we approached them with reverence. These were tools that had to be mastered to get even the most basic output right. So fast forward today, Adobe's massive. In fact, I just came from Adobe's annual summit where I sat in an Adobe lounge drinking an Adobe branded Americano, reflecting on the Timbaland concert I just went to, also sponsored by Adobe. So Adobe has become this massive force within creative, within marketing, and quite frankly, within experience just in general. And it means something really, really profound to a lot of people in those industries. But I want to actually just pause for a second and think today about the designer and that core group that's been with Adobe for many, many years, and specifically what's happening with Adobe and the industry and what it means to those designers that have been on the journey with Adobe for decades. Because as you all know, Adobe, along with its competition, is racing to automate production, ideation, and even final output of creative across nearly every touch point imaginable. And it's just got accelerated last week's announcement from Adobe, of course, with its CX Enterprise vision and a new class of AI coworker agent designed to actively participate in the creative process. And not to mention, Claude and its new design capabilities. I mean, these aren't just tools. These are systems that generate, iterate, and optimize, and increasingly are becoming autonomous. So where does that leave us? I mean, things are starting to feel different. Because for the first time, the tools are not just unlocking creativity for designers. I mean, they're beginning to redefine who or what is actually designing. And for a lot of people, there's tension there, clearly. A lot of creatives specifically. I mean, these were tools that weren't just tools. They were identity. They represented years of effort, nights, and the slow process of turning instinct into something real. I mean, mastery was something that really meant something. And it was really creating a line between those who could create and those who could not. And it was hard to distinguish the tools from craft at times for a lot of designers. For some, I think this moment is really about craft being eroded, and that what made design hard and meaningful is being taken away. And that real tension, I think, is something we should talk about, because I think if you zoom out, this pattern isn't entirely new. I wasn't around for it, but I've heard the stories of the collapse of the print industry. It eliminated entire categories of creative work, forced redefinition of what it even meant to be a designer. And at the center of that shift was Adobe and others pushing digital forward with products like Photoshop and Illustrator and others. And it was really designed to unlock creativity and democratize it. And the outcome, of course, wasn't the end of creativity. It was the expansion of it. By lowering the barrier of entry, Adobe, like others, opened the door to more people, more ideas, more perspectives. And it forced a generation of creatives to evolve. And so the craft, it didn't disappear, obviously. It shifted. And that shift is what made it possible for kids like me in the 90s to actually see design as accessible. So question, do kids in the 2020s have that same feeling of blank canvas optimism? They're not starting from the same place I was, clearly. I mean, they're starting with tools that guide them, accelerate them, and in some cases collaborate with them. They can explore ideas faster, generate starting points quicker, and they learn as they go. So does that make creativity less valuable? I actually think it has the opportunity to do the opposite. Because the craft was never just the output, it was the thinking. So what changes now is how fast that thinking comes to life. Ideas are expressed quicker with more fidelity, which means we can push them further. We can explore more, test more. We can really and ultimately solve deeper problems. To me, that's the unlock here. We spend a lot of time talking about what AI is taking away from designers specifically. I don't think we spend enough time talking about what it's unlocking. I think it's access, it's confidence, and it's a starting point that's miles ahead of where many of us began. Every generation builds on the last, but this moment feels different because the acceleration is not incremental, it's exponential. So yeah, disruption is happening. There's no way around it, and more's coming. Roles are going to change. Some will disappear. New ones will emerge. But when I think back to the kid in front of a screen, trying to make something out of nothing, this moment feels less like an ending and more like an expansion of possibility. AI isn't ending the creative world. It's doing what tools like Adobe Photoshop and others have always done at their best, lowering the barrier, expanding access, and forcing us all to rethink what it means to create. Because the craft of design isn't going away. The gap between thinking and making is just getting smaller.